Dust swirled like a blinding storm as the Chinook helicopter set down at Forward Operating Base, FOB, Sentinel. I didn't move. I just sat in the cargo hold, hands death-gripped around my M110 sniper rifle like it was a newborn baby. The other passengers, replacements, supply guys, even an embedded reporter, had given up on trying to talk to me hours ago during the flight from Bagram. When that ramp dropped, I was the first one out. I moved fast, navigating the heavy gear and the thin air with a practice that only comes from too many months outside the wire. I refused to sling the rifle. I carried it barreled down but held in both hands, my eyes constantly scanning the perimeter, even though we were inside concrete T-walls and guarded towers. Lieutenant Dave Miller was waiting. I could tell from his faded uniform that he'd been baking in the Afghan sun for months. He'd obviously read my file. My numbers were impressive. 128 confirmed kills, a silver star from Helmand Province. But those 3 failed psych evaluations I'd somehow beaten back were likely giving him pause. So was the note from my previous CO. Exceptional soldier. Results speak for themselves. Be patient with her methods. Staff Sergeant Sarah Jenkins, welcome to FOB Sentinel, Miller said, offering his hand. I shifted the rifle to my left, never letting go, and gave a brief handshake. Sir, where's my bunk? I'll have someone show you. First, let me introduce you to the... With respect, Lieutenant, I'd like to inspect my position before nightfall. Introductions can wait until dinner. He blinked, clearly taken aback, but nodded. There wasn't disrespect in my voice, just an intensity that told him I operated on my own timeline. Of course, Corporal Davis will show you to the barracks. Maria Davis, a combat medic, stepped forward. Right this way, Sergeant. I walked past her, rifle still gripped tight. The barracks were standard plywood and sandbags, filled with the smell of sweat, gun oil, and the endless Afghan dust. My new squad was scattered around, cleaning weapons, writing letters, playing cards. Sergeant First Class Mark Thompson, the platoon sergeant, stood up. He was a massive guy, 15 years in, with a handshake that could probably crush concrete. You must be our new... I ignored him and walked straight to the empty bunk. I dropped my ruck and immediately went to work. I dragged the bunk 6 inches, angling it so I could see both exits and the northern wall. Through all of this, the rifle never left my hands. Sergeant Jenkins. Thompson tried again. I'm SFC Thompson. This is Specialist Jones, Corporal Davis. Pleased to meet everyone, I said, not looking up. I was already zoning my gear. Ammo here, cleaning kit there, hydration within arm's reach. The rifle was now on the bunk, my right hand resting on its receiver as I worked with my left. Jones, a scrawny Texan, nudged the guy next to him. Is she going to marry that rifle or what? I heard him. I always heard everything. I didn't say a word, just continued my setup with the efficiency of a machine. Dinner was in the plywood chow hall. I was the last one in, and I felt every eye in the platoon on me. I carried my rifle through the line and sat down, placing it across my lap. I ate with one hand, the other resting on the stock. Jesus, Jones muttered, loud enough for half the table to hear. Miller decided to address it directly. Staff Sergeant Jenkins, you know the armory here is secure. Standard practice is to store weapons there when not on duty. I looked up, expression dead calm. With respect, sir, my rifle stays with me. It's not negotiable. Regulation clearly states, regulation allows for personal retention of assigned weapons at the commander's discretion, sir. I'm requesting that discretion. I maintain this rifle to higher standards than the armory's inventory. I'm responsible for its readiness, and I take that seriously. Miller studied me for a long moment. Technically, I was right. Pushing it on day 1 wasn't a battle he wanted to fight. Fine, but it better be secured when you're sleeping. It will be, sir. But Miller's definition of secured and mine were very different. Mine meant it was in my hands, under my control, every single second. That night, as the platoon settled in, I lay fully clothed except for my boots. I was on my side, the rifle cradled lengthwise against my body, the stock near my face, barrel pointed at my feet. My arm draped over it possessively. My eyes were closed, but my breathing never entered the deep rhythm of true sleep. Across the room, Jones was whispering to Davis, "Man, that is not normal." Davis, more sympathetic, whispered back, "Maybe she's adjusting. Give her time." Thompson, however, was already planning to talk to Miller in the morning about a behavioral health evaluation. He'd seen combat stress manifest in hypervigilance before. In the dark, my eyes opened. I felt their judgment, their doubts. They always thought I was damaged or paranoid, that I couldn't let go of the war. They didn't understand that letting go was exactly how soldiers died. I traced the cold metal of my rifle's receiver. Somewhere out in the Afghan night, enemies were planning. They were always planning. And when they came, not if, I would be ready. I'd learned that lesson in blood 2 years ago. I would never forget it. The next morning, I was already field stripping my rifle by the time the sun hit the Hindu Kush mountains. I was perfectly alert, contrasting sharply with the groggy, complaining squad stumbling toward the latrine. Jones looked like he'd been hit by a truck. I looked like a machine that had simply powered back on. No rest required. At the daily patrol brief, Lieutenant Miller outlined the standard Hearts and Minds presence patrol through 3 local villages. I'd be providing overwatch from elevated positions while the platoon moved below. I wasn't looking at the route, though. My eyes were fixed on the northern ridgeline overlooking FOB Sentinel itself. "Something wrong, Sergeant?" Miller asked. "What's our coverage on that ridgeline, sir? Observation posts? Sensors?" "That's outside our patrol area. Pretty quiet. We've got ground sensors, a camera on Tower 4. Why?" "Just familiarizing myself with the terrain, sir." But my eyes lingered on the mountains, studying the dead spaces where sensors couldn't see. The patrol was smooth until 3 Taliban fighters opened up with AKs from a tree line. My response was automatic and clinical. Shot 1, 823 meters, center mass, lead fighter down. Shot 2, the second shooter attempting to flank, dropped before he'd taken 3 steps. Shot 3. The final insurgent turned to run and fell mid-stride. Total elapsed time, 11 seconds, 3 shots, 3 kills. "Holy shit," Davis breathed into her radio. When we returned, my reputation as a shooter was established, but so was my strangeness. While the rest of the platoon unwound, I grabbed a digital camera and headed to Tower 4. For 3 hours, I photographed the northern ridgeline, methodically documenting angles, shadows, and dead zones, filling a notebook with measurements. Thompson found me there. "Jenkins, what the hell are you doing?" "Baseline documentation, Sergeant. If something changes up there, I'll know." "Changes like what?" I looked at him with those unblinking, focused eyes. "Like someone watching us who shouldn't be there." Thompson felt a chill. "You see something specific?" "Not yet, but I'm looking." At dinner, the tension was high. I sat at the end of the table, rifle across my lap, eyes scanning the room, exits, windows, and fields of fire. "She's totally losing it," Jones said quietly to Davis. "Now she's taking pictures of rocks." Davis was defensive. "She saved our asses today. 3 kills, 3 shots. That's not someone who's losing it." "That's exactly what worries me," Thompson interrupted. "She's hyper-competent in combat, but can't turn it off. She's treating the chow hall like a combat zone." Before Miller could intervene, I stood up abruptly, my attention fixed on something out the window. I walked to the doorway, staring toward the northern perimeter. "Sergeant Jenkins?" Miller followed me. "I don't know, sir. Something felt—" I trailed off. Probably nothing. But later that night, reviewing the photos on my laptop, my blood ran cold. In 3 separate images taken over 2 days, there was a light reflection from the same position on the ridgeline, approximately 1,200 meters out. Scope glint. Someone with optics was watching the FOB, and they were matching their surveillance to our high-activity periods, patrols, supply drops. I pulled out a topographical map and began to analyze the position from a tactical perspective. The northern approach offered concealment in the ravines and elevated firing positions. It was tactically perfect, and it was exactly where someone was watching from. I checked the lunar calendar. New moon in 4 days, the darkest night of the month. Perfect for an assault. I started sketching probable attack routes, likely breach points, and optimal heavy weapons positions. All signs pointed to one conclusion. FOB Sentinel was being set up for a major attack, and nobody else had noticed. By dawn, I had 17 pages of evidence. Photographs, annotated maps, tactical analysis. At 0200, when the rest of the platoon was sound asleep, I sat on my bunk, rifle across my knees, staring at my red-marked map. I'd seen this pattern before, 2 years ago at another FOB. I'd noticed the signs then too, the subtle changes in the local population, the unusual observations, the creeping dread that something was wrong. But I had dismissed it. I'd told myself I was being paranoid. I'd locked my rifle in the armory like a normal soldier and tried to sleep. 7 of my teammates died that night because I hadn't trusted my instincts. I tightened my jaw. Not again. Never again. At 0545, I walked into Lieutenant Miller's plywood office. He looked up, irritated. "Sergeant, it's not even 0600. This better be important." "Sir, FOB Sentinel is going to be attacked, probably within the next 72 hours. I spread my documentation across his desk. I showed him the systematic scope glints, timed during our peak activity. I showed him the behavioral changes in the local villages, the missing shepherds, the compound that had gone from 17 occupants to just 4, all of fighting age gone. These villages have used the same routes for generations. They stopped 3 days ago. That's not random." Miller looked at the photos. "Sarah, this glint could be sunlight hitting rocks. At 0430, sir?" I pulled out a photo time-stamped before dawn, showing a tiny pinpoint of artificial light. That's night vision or thermal, or a shepherd with a flashlight. But no shepherd sits in the same position for 3-hour intervals watching a military base. That's reconnaissance. I presented the radio intercept summaries. Taliban chatter in this valley has increased 40% in the last week. No specific keywords, so intel hasn't flagged it, but the volume and coordination matches standard pre-attack communication patterns. "And you think they'll attack when?" I pointed to the calendar. "New moon is in 3 days, darkest night. That's when I'd hit." He studied the maps. "Where would they come from?" "Northern approach right here," I said, jabbing the map. "They've used that ridgeline to study us. They know our sensor coverage has gaps in these ravines. They'll use this wadi for a covered approach, breach the perimeter where Tower 4 and 5 have overlapping blind spots, then push toward command and the armory." It was a classic assault profile, and the analysis was disturbingly sound. Miller was half convinced, which made him cautious. "I need to take this to Captain Davis, the FOB commander. Wait here." 20 minutes later, I was briefing both of them. Captain Davis listened with increasing skepticism. "Sergeant Jenkins, I appreciate your vigilance, but I can't put this FOB on high alert because shepherds changed their routes and you saw some reflections on a hill." "Sir, it's more than that." "I read your file," Davis said, his tone firm. "Previous commanders noted your tendency toward hypervigilance. You've been sent to behavioral health 4 times. And all 4 times I was cleared for duty, sir, because my analysis was sound." "Cleared, yes, but the notes suggest difficulty distinguishing between actual and perceived threats. You see patterns that may not exist." "The patterns exist, Captain. The question is whether anyone will listen before people die." The room went silent. Miller broke the tension. "Sir, maybe we could increase perimeter security as a precaution. Additional patrols on the northern approach." Davis considered it. "Fine. We'll increase perimeter patrols and add a guard rotation on the northern towers. But I'm not ordering full alert status based on this analysis." Outside, Miller tried to soften the blow. "I know that wasn't what you wanted to hear, Sarah. He's wrong, sir. In 3 days, maybe less, they're coming. And when they do, they will hit that northern perimeter hardest. I believe you're concerned, and some of your analysis is solid. But you arrived 6 days ago. You won't put down your weapon. You don't sleep. Sarah, from the outside, this looks like I'm paranoid, unstable, broken. My eyes flashed. I've heard it all, Lieutenant. Right up until the moment I'm proven right and the bodies start stacking up. He softened. What happened at your last FOB? I was quiet for a long moment. What happened was I ignored my instincts. I let people convince me I was seeing threats that weren't there. I was trying to be normal. My rifle was locked in the armory. When the attack came, I was weaponless, helpless. I survived by playing dead under my teammates' bodies. My voice cracked. 7 good soldiers paid for my doubt with their lives. I will not make that mistake again. I turned and walked away. That afternoon, Thompson found me on the perimeter wall. LT told me about the meeting. Then you know, nobody believes me. You really think they're coming? I don't think, Sergeant. I know. I showed him my latest photo. Fresh vehicle tracks in that wadi, taken this morning. No reason for locals to be in an area that's all rocks and scorpions. Thompson studied it. It was legitimate evidence of recent activity. What are you going to do? I looked at him with those intense, unblinking eyes. What I always do, Sergeant. I'm going to be ready. When they come, I'll be in position, rifle in hand, waiting. That evening, Lieutenant Miller entered the barracks. Listen up. Enhanced guard rotation starts tonight. 4-hour shifts instead of 6. Northern towers get extra eyes. After he left, Jones muttered, all this because the new girl has nightmares. Not nightmares, specialist, I said. Memories, and people who ignore memories are doomed to create new ones. The FOB settled into its evening routines. But I sat in the gathering shadows, rifle held close, eyes fixed on the northern perimeter. I could feel the enemy preparing, just like animals feel an earthquake coming. 72 hours, maybe less. Day 8, 0157 hours. My eyes snapped open in the darkness. I hadn't been fully asleep. Something in the night air had shifted, a primal, certain feeling of danger. Around me, the platoon slept. I sat up, already reaching for my rifle. I was fully clothed, my boots loosely laced. My night vision scanned the barracks, but nothing seemed wrong. Then I noticed the silence. The distant hum of generators was there, but the periodic radio chatter from the guard towers had stopped. It was tense, deliberate. I was lacing my boots when I felt the distant vibration through the floorboards. Incoming, I screamed, grabbing my go bag. The first mortar hit 3 seconds later, slamming into the command building. Chaos erupted, fire alarms, shouting, the distinctive crump of 82mm mortar rounds walking across the compound. Soldiers stumbled awake in confusion. Gear up! Northern perimeter, move! Outside was pandemonium. Mortars hit the motor pool and the armory, designed to coordinate defense and neutralize heavy weapons. I ran against the flow of soldiers rushing to the eastern wall. The mortars were a diversion. I reached the northern fighting position, reinforced concrete with overlapping fields of fire. Corporal Davis and Specialist Jones were already at the M240 machine gun, looking east. What are you doing here? Jones shouted over the explosions. The attack's coming from the east. The mortars are coming from the east. The assault is coming from right here. I set my rifle up on the barrier. Jones grabbed his radio. Overwatch 1, this is North 3. Possible, I repeat, possible enemy activity to our north. The radio crackled back. Priority is eastern sector. Maintain position. The transmission cut off with another explosion. My eyes were already pressed to my scope, scanning the darkness beyond the wire. Contact north, I announced, voice ice-cold calm. 50+ enemy fighters, 900 meters and closing. Davis, get on that radio and tell them the main assault is hitting our position in 6 minutes. Jones finally saw them through his optics. Holy shit, she was right. The Taliban force was advancing confidently toward what they believed would be an undermanned defensive position. They had no idea I was waiting. I identified the squad leader. Crosshairs settled on his center mass. Range, 847 meters. Davis, relay to the LT. We're engaging. Heavy contact imminent. We are holding this position. Sergeant, there's like 60 of them and 3 of us, Jones said, his voice trembling. Then we'd better make every shot count. I squeezed the trigger. The M110 barked, and 600 meters away, the squad leader collapsed. I immediately transitioned. 2 fighters were carrying a recoilless rifle that could punch through our defenses. Second shot, recoilless operator down. Third shot, his replacement down. Jones opened up with the M240 machine gun. The enemy assault force, so carefully timed, froze in confusion as precise, lethal fire poured from a position they thought would be lightly defended. I dropped another fighter trying to set up a machine gun at 580 meters. Then a Taliban officer trying to reorganize his confused men. Then an RPG gunner. "She's not missing," Jones screamed over the roar of his M240. "Not a single goddamn shot." Sergeant Thompson and a fire team slid into the fighting position. He took one look at the scene. Dozens of heat signatures advancing, me shooting with mechanical precision, and his eyes went wide. "You tried to tell us." "More fighters flanking left," I called out. My rifle swung left with fluid precision. I let the lead target move, accounting for his motion. Shot 8, flanker pitched backward. Shot 9, his companion frozen in shock. A squad tried to rush the wire. I dropped the first 3 in rapid succession. Crack, crack, crack. The M240 tore through the next wave. "They're pulling back!" Thompson shouted. "Negative, they're reorganizing. Watch the right flank." 2 minutes later, they emerged from a ravine on the right. Shot 15, the point man dropped. Shot 16, their machine gunner. The Taliban commanders committed their reserve force. Approximately 30 fighters surged forward, a final coordinated push to overwhelm us. "Kim, get the LT on the radio. Tell them every gun on this wall now." My shooting became systematic, working left to right across the advancing line. Shot 23, 24. My shoulder was screaming from the recoil. The world was a simple cycle. Breathe, acquire, squeeze, recycle. Reinforcements arrived, a whole platoon now on the northern wall. But through the chaos, my rifle maintained its measured cadence. In the eye of the storm, I was calm, focused, deadly. I dropped a final fighter who made it to within 200 meters of the wire, a young warrior I saw clearly through my scope for 1 second before the shot. I couldn't hesitate. Hesitation meant we died. "How much ammo you got, Sarah?" Jones yelled, reloading his red-hot M240. I slapped in a fresh magazine. "Enough." I'd packed double the normal load, 400 rounds. Everyone had mocked me for it. Now, those extra magazines were saving lives. The assault broke. The enemy force was in full route, retreating to the ravines. But I didn't celebrate. I didn't relax. I shifted my aim to the ravine. "They've got wounded to recover, commanders to regroup. We've got 20 minutes before they try something else." The second assault came at 03:27 hours, exactly as I had predicted. They'd changed tactics, using small teams to probe for weak points. They found none. I directed fire, picking off individual fighters, identifying flanking maneuvers before they could even begin. My rifle cracked twice more, ending each new threat before it could materialize. By 04:15, the Taliban's second attempt had failed as completely as their first. An eerie silence settled over the battlefield. The sun was beginning to lighten the eastern sky, revealing the full scope of the carnage. Bodies were littered clusters where my fire had caught them in the open. The intelligence team count was staggering. 34 enemy KIA directly attributable to my shooting alone. The enemy had expected an undermanned defensive position. Instead, they had encountered me. Captain Davis found me sitting against the concrete barrier, accepting a water bottle. My right cheek was torn from the rifle stock, and my shoulder was already a massive, deep bruise. "How did you know, Sergeant?" His voice held no skepticism now, only respect and a trace of shame. "Because I never stopped looking, sir. Everyone else saw a quiet sector. I saw a target being surveilled. Everyone else saw normal village patterns. I saw preparation for war. I looked up at him. Everyone else slept soundly because nothing had happened yet. I couldn't sleep because I knew something was going to happen. Davis knelt beside me. I should have listened. I let my bias, my assumption that you were paranoid, override your evidence. That's on me. If you hadn't been ready. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I tried to get her into a medevac helicopter for her shoulder and face, the medic told Lieutenant Miller, but she refused orders. Negative, I stay with my unit, I said immediately. Jones approached, carrying a stack of my expended magazines. I counted them, Sergeant. 17 magazines, 340 rounds. He looked at me with open wonder. You tried to warn us. You told everyone this was coming, and we didn't listen. I nodded. You're listening now. Thompson added quietly, Rivera. Staff Sergeant James Rivera. I knew him from Ranger School. He was a good man. My throat tightened, a tear finally escaping. He was my best friend. More than that, he was a brother. We'd been through 3 deployments. He trusted me to keep him safe from a distance while he called my shots. I failed him. You didn't fail him, Sarah. The command failed you both by not listening. Maybe. But I was the one who put my rifle in the armory that night. I was the one who decided to try to be normal. That decision cost 7 lives. The group sat in silent reverence. Jones stared at the ground. Davis was openly crying. Thompson's jaw was clenched. How do you live like that? Davis asked gently. Always expecting the worst? Always ready for violence? I don't know how to live any other way anymore, I admitted. Every nightmare, every flashback became a lesson. I turned my trauma into training. Every detail of my obsessive preparation, the rifle, the camera, the extra ammo, all of it was rehearsed in my mind. Tonight, when it finally came, I was ready. Captain Davis, who had been listening to our conversation, was approached by an intelligence sergeant. Sir, they found detailed maps of the entire FOB on one of the Taliban commanders. Guard rotations, defensive positions, weak points. They've been planning this attack for 3 weeks. He added, FOB Sentinel was the first target. It was supposed to be a coordinated multi-FOB attack. If they had succeeded here, they were going to hit 3 more bases in the region. The implications were massive. My analysis hadn't just saved this FOB, it had potentially saved hundreds of soldiers. Captain Davis looked at me. The variable they couldn't predict was you, Sergeant. They couldn't predict a soldier who never stopped watching. He looked at his team, then back to me. I was a fool. You were right. You were seeing threats that hadn't materialized yet. There's a crucial difference. As I left FOB Sentinel weeks later, the physical damage had been repaired, but the culture had changed fundamentally. I'd spent my final days conducting informal training sessions, teaching pattern recognition, analytical vigilance, and the importance of trusting your instincts. Even Captain Davis had instituted what he called the Jenkins Protocols, a formalized system for analyzing and logging behavioral threat assessments. And there was a new tradition that started organically, Jenkins Watch, where a volunteer specifically focused on long-term pattern observation. On my final night, I walked the northern perimeter and found Specialist Jones on Jenkins Watch, sitting exactly where I had been. Documenting the baseline, he said, not taking his eye from the camera. Want to make sure we catch any changes, because the moment we stop watching is when they'll come back. My squad had presented me with a plaque inscribed with the words, "The Sentinel's Sentinel." The soldier who never slept so others could wake. But on that last night, for the first time in 2 years, I truly slept. 4 uninterrupted hours. My rifle was in my arms, and I was still fully dressed. But I slept, and I dreamed of James. And in the dream, he was smiling. As the helicopter lifted off from FOB Sentinel, I looked down one last time at the northern wall. I could see the Jenkins Watch volunteer at his post, maintaining the vigil. The FOB would be okay. They knew how to watch now. They'd learned what I'd learned in blood. Vigilance isn't paranoia. Preparation isn't fear. The price of safety is eternal watchfulness. I was changed, shaped by trauma. But I was also validated and proven. The woman who slept holding her rifle wasn't crazy. She was the reason everyone else could sleep at all.